So, here's the Jeep. I just installed a shackle relocation bracket on the back, and that boosted it up another inch. And after measuring the axle tubes to the frames, I found out that the back is sitting at 6.5, and the front's only sitting at 4. So that's probably why I blew my shock out. They look like they have about the same clearance, but the front fenders mount much higher than the back, the flares. So there's not a whole lot of compression left with the shocks. So the one over here got fucking nailed, and it don't work no more. So we need to lift the front to even out the body a little bit, so there's not so much rake on it, and keep the shocks from getting totally explodified, because that's not good. So the easiest way, or I should say at least the cheapest way, to lift a vehicle with coil springs is with coil spring spacers. They're basically big rubber pucks that go in this spot right here and just push the spring down as far as you need it to. And that's their only job, really. They just sit there and they have a lower mounting point to the body than previously. So it's cheap and it's simple and it makes sense. You know, you're just moving the spring down instead of getting a new longer one. So here are my coil springs I'm going to be using today. These are made by Rough Country. This is a 1 3/4 inch spacer. And they got these little cutouts because that's where they sit against the side of the vehicle. So we're going to take the tires off. We're going to support the body of the truck, not the axle. So you're going to put jack stands underneath the frame rails, and then drop it down and get those springs out. Alright, so with the tire off, you can get a much better view of what's going on down here. So you can see how the shock is currently limiting travel. If I were to take the jack down, this side doesn't go down anymore. I think the other side goes down a little. But other things that'll limit your travel are your lower control arms. Usually they'll start hitting on this, but with these drop brackets, that gives you a lot more droop. And possibly front drive shaft extension, depending on which way it goes, either extension or compression. So just take a look at that. Also, if you have factory brake lines, that's a big one. Do not stretch those rubber ones out, they will not last. Okay, so I'm going to take this shock out just because it's broken anyway, and we should be able to drop this down more, but I'm probably going to need a compressor, because this thing is still in there pretty good. So, surprise, surprise, I found out what the culprit was. Track bar. That thing's holding it up on that the bracket there, so it doesn't want to drop any lower. So that's interesting. Huh. Good to know. Okay. So, I guess it's time to start compressing this spring. I'll show you what the compressor looks like. So, here's my fancy doohickey. This is a spring compressor. And it's got all the cool stuff. It's got 4 little jaws, and it's got little locking pins, and just all kinds of shit, really. It's pretty neat. And it holds the spring pretty secure, so you can wiggle it out. So basically you just crank on this thing until it's as compressed as you can get it, and hopefully you can free it. And if not, I'll have to start dropping components. So I'll start cranking this down. Alright, to help this job go faster, I'm actually going to drop my track bar so that I can drop the axle more and just wiggle it out. So this is an aftermarket one. This is a Rubicon Express with a Heim joint on this end. So it's just got a nut at the top and a bolt at the bottom instead of your usual tie rod end that would look something like this. So I'm going to take that out and then lower the axle more, and then hopefully the spring will wiggle out. Alright, track bar is unbolted from the frame side. This is compressed. We can compress it more, but we might not have to. So now, if we take the jack and lower it. Oh yeah, look at all that droop, baby. Freedom. Now there's some fucking droop. That's more like it. Look at that. Holy shit. Okay, so now you can see, okay, the drive shaft actually compresses. That's cool. And that breather hose is really getting tugged on, so I guess I'll bring it back up a bit. Okay, so you got the spring down, you got your lovely bump stop here, you're ready to put that fucker in, right? You just wiggle it in there and put it on, right? Just put it. So, fun fact, you didn't know this. You didn't know this, did you? This little bump stop thing has to come out because this ring is too thick for that bump stop to fit around. Or the coil spacer is too thin to fit around that. So, how do you take it out? My favorite weapon, the pipe wrench. It just unscrews like this. So, once you take off that stupid little bastard, then you can put your goddamn coil spacer in there. Alright, so that's what this little nipple looks like. So, now, you can just take this dude and just, whoop, slip it on in there. Look at that. Now, there's a stock coil spring isolator up here. There's a rubber piece at the top, and then a harder plastic or metal or something underneath it. I just talked to them, and they said to just keep it there and put this over top. So I was wondering if maybe you could put the spacer on and then put this on. It's got like a rubber lip, so it'd be neat because it would be able to hold the spacer on there without it moving around. So that way it would never fall out, which is kind of cool. But with this little doodad, you don't have to worry about it totally falling out because this will hold it up with the lip that's on here. So you slip that on there, screw that on there, and then we can put it back. Okay, so now our spacer's in place. Assuming this flat piece right here is going to face against the wall, although I have plenty of clearance and that's not really an issue. But now we're just going to, line up our spring. And I might jack the axle up a little bit so it lines up and then just uncompress it. Okay, there you go. Whole coil spring's in there. And ready to go. So now once we jack the axle back up and attach our shock, she'll be set. I don't think that thing's falling out anytime soon. Now, if you have stock springs, that might be a different story. But for this, I think we're pretty good. I don't think I'm ever going to be getting that much droop. Pretty cool looking, though. Alright, quick tip. Especially if you have the different style compressor that doesn't attach on both sides, if it's just the one little section, jack your axle up as high as you can and still be able to get your compressor in. And then drop it. And that way your compressor's already compressing some of the spring for you. Makes your job a little easier. Now if you want, you can remove the spring as well if that's easier. You just want to loosen up this little bolt right here that holds this. It's the spring retainer, and then just rotate it to the side and you can pull it out. Now, warning about this. If this spring ever lets go, this is extremely dangerous. It's under a lot of pressure, and if it can hold a truck up, can you imagine what happens when that thing lets go? So make sure that both ends aren't pointing at you or anyone else that you care about. So that out of the way, do the same shit on this side. Alright, second puck is on. So if this little bump stop spacer thing really doesn't want to come out, tell it how you really feel with one of these. Saw that little pipe and just fucking pissed its pants and came out real easy. So, can't get it out, get some more leverage. So now that that spacer's on, put that guy in there, and reverse removal, all that good shit. Yeah. If you do take the coil spring completely out in order to get that spacer in, there's a good chance that you're going to have to compress the spring more to get it back in. Because since I moved it up to lift it over that, that bump stop, I had to compress it more to do the same maneuver. So, no matter what, you're going to be pushing on this for a while, but there you go. That's on there now. And there we have it. That's side 2 done. Okay. Now, you can jack it back up and reconnect anything you had to. So for me, I have to jack it up and connect the track bar and install that new shock over there. Then you can put your tires on. We'll take a look at it on the ground. Alright, there you go. Puck's installed. Pretty simple. And if you notice, it's sitting on there real nice. I actually had to sit there and like wiggle it around a little bit after lifting it up a little just to get it to sit on there perfect, but it's looking good now. So, how's that? So, I did my measuring. You're going to measure from the top of the axle tube to the frame and see what kind of numbers you get. Now, for the older Dana 30 models that have the CAD system right here, the central axle disconnect, you'll notice that it's raised. So you want to measure this little tiny section to the left. That way you'll get accurate measurements compared to everyone else. So, my old measurement was 11 inches from the axle tube to the frame. The new measurement is 13. So this 1 3/4 spacer actually gave me closer to 2 inches of lift. So, now, and that might partially be to due to this brand new shock. I tried cycling the suspension a little bit to try to get it to sit where it should, but that might be giving me slightly higher numbers. Because it is, I think, a gas charge or something. But now the back's sitting at 6.5, and the front sits at 6. So there it is. 35-inch tires on 6 inches of lift. Neato. Alright, one more thing that you need to check suspension-wise. The coil spacers shouldn't change too much of the geometry, but there is one thing you're going to want to look at, and that is your track bar length. Because the track bar keeps the axle centered underneath the vehicle, and when you lift the vehicle, it moves the axle. So if you were to leave the track bar at the stock length and bump it up, especially when you're going big lifts or big coil spacer lifts, you'll notice that this side is kind of under there a little. You come over here, that side's way over. So currently the axle is closer to the driver's side. So what you'd want to do is either push the body, or the way I like to do it is you unlock the steering wheel and move the steering wheel, and it'll actually move the body. And then you can center it back up. And this is where an adjustable track bar is very useful, because you can dial in exactly where you need your vehicle to sit. So if you have to adjust the track bar to center your axle, you're also going to have to adjust your drag length so that you can center your steering wheel again. So don't forget to do that. Besides that, everything else should be okay. Headlights too. You might want to make sure that your headlights aren't blinding people now that you're sitting up a little higher in the air. So, So, as you can see, coil spacers are an easy way to level out your suspension or even lift it for cheap if you don't feel like going out and buying new coils. Although, having new coils are definitely nicer, especially if you need different spring rates or lengths or shit like that. But, for leveling out, it's perfect. It really is. There's not really anything wrong with it. So, there you go. That's how to put in some coil spacers in your XJ. Yippee! Thanks, Rough Country.